FM and 98.7fm.com. Joining me in the studio is the creator of some of the most recognized guitar riffs in rock and roll. Guns N' Roses man, Velvet Revolver man, living legend, rock icon Slash.
Hey.
Thanks for coming in, man.
Wow, that's very complimentary. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Hey, well, I obviously want to get into the new record, but I want to talk first about the Sunset Strip Music Festival. It's just announced that you're going to be the honoree for this year's event.
I know, that's pretty bitchin'.
Yeah, right?
I feel, obviously really honored about it. But it's really cool, too, because I'm not really as much of an import in the Sunset Strip music scene as most of my peers. So I was like transplanted there like when I was 6, and I've been living there and raised there and sort of raised in the music business there. So I've been a part of it all the way up until present. So it really feels like home to me. And for them to call me up and go, hey, we want you to represent, I was like, that's very, very cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like your playground as a
exactly,
kid.
Yeah.
What were some of the early shows that you went to on the Strip?
Well, I spent a lot of time at the Troubadour because in the early 70s, that's where, Dylan played there, and I remember going to Helen Reddy gigs there, and Neil Young gigs there, and Linda Ronstadt gigs there, and, different people that my parents were working with. And so there was definitely a really vibrant scene at Doug Weston's Troubadour, because when Doug was still around. Yeah. Anyway, so that was like the beginning, and then there was the Roxy, was another place I spent a lot of time in. And then when I got a little bit older, and I was about 13 or 14, I started hanging out at the Starwood. Mm-hmm. And, the whiskey and stuff like that.
And then what was the first time you hit the stage on the Strip?
Good question.
If you remember it.
I think the first gig that I ever played on the Strip was at the Troubadour. And that was probably not with Guns N' Roses, but with Hollywood Rose, which was a band that I had with Steve Adler and Axl at one point.
And what about the first GNR gig?
First GNR gig was let's see, I think that was at the Troubadour as well. We definitely were pretty much starting out at the Troubadour. And at that point, the whiskey was closed. And, to get into the Roxy, we definitely weren't, we didn't have the clout to get to the Roxy at that point.
Yeah. It's, when you think back of, modern rock history, there's only probably a few rock albums in a decade that do what Appetite for Destruction did. Blow up more or less overnight.
Pretty phenomenal kind of thing. It was not something that I saw coming, and for it to be as iconic a record, or a band, but also like our first record, was something that you just can't predict that.
But what about the effect? Can you talk about the effects that it had maybe on you personally and on the band as a whole, to just go from kind of where you were playing the Strip here and there in LA to worldwide stardom?
Well, it didn't happen quite like that. I think we started out in like 1983, and we actually got a record deal in 86, and then we put the record out in 87, and we're opening band for 2.5 years before anybody really gave a shit about us. And then at some point, we were opening for Aerosmith, and this was in 1989, and Sweet Child of Mine had come out, and all of a sudden we just became huge. Like, that was the overnight part. But prior to that, there was a lot of work and a lot of long hours put into Guns N' Roses. Yeah.
And what do you think it was? I mean, what do you think was behind that? I mean, it could be said for Nirvana or for several bands, but what do you think it was about those collection of few singles off that album and what happened?
I mean, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think the band as a whole was a unique combination of people, and I will say all very talented people and songwriter, musicians, and all that. And we had a very unique thing going on, which is what made us popular in LA, especially in the midst of the sort of hair metal scene, which we weren't really the advocates for. And then it's sort of that really translated across the board. But we were also fortunate that we had a couple people that, we had an A&R guy that signed us to Geffen that really got what the band was about and saw a bigger picture than even we saw. And then we also had a manager that was a lot like, what was Pistol's old manager? Remember, very famous, oh God, I can't remember his name. Anyway, someone who had a lot of vision and really understood how to sort of market this band and let it keep its edge, you know, because we weren't about to conform to any kind of sort of the way that the industry worked or what we were supposed to do to be able to fit in with the sort of like music business curriculum. Anyhow, so that combination of getting us out in the right places and all that kind of stuff really had a lot to do with the way that the band sort of had a really cool kind of image, and we sort of retained a certain kind of street cred and so on and so forth as we got bigger. And then after that, it was, you know, Welcome to the Jungle came out, and not to too much fanfare. And then this one song that we had, Sweet Child of Mine, just seemed just a big, huge crossover hit. And that I just never would have predicted, especially that particular song being the one that was going to take us over the top.
I've heard you're not. Is that the song that you're not too fond of?
It's a great song, but within the sort of confines of sort of Guns N' Roses delivery, which was pretty manic and loud and fast and raunchy, we had this one sort of up-tempo ballad. And so yeah, it didn't necessarily sit that well with me, you know, for a long time. It was sort of like I used to dread playing it live. Like that was the one part of the set that I used to hate. But you know, I guess I got used to it.
Yeah, of course. Flashing forward through several albums, you know, the band, you know, like any relationship, issues develop. Was there like a nail in the coffin for you, as with like I'm done with Guns N' Roses?
I don't like to dwell on the negative with Guns, because I think it just sends the wrong message out. Because I love what Guns N' Roses was about, and everything, all the guys in it, and even Axl, and just the way that it all came together and the way it worked. But yeah, eventually there was what I would consider strenuous things, and then finally, at one point, there was some contractual stuff that came up that I was not cool with, and that really forced my hand to leave.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.